Hi there, Trailblazer owners. Today in your 2021 Chevrolet Trailblazer, we're going to be taking a look at and showing you how to install Roadmaster's Battery Disconnect. There's 5 main components you'll need when flat towing your vehicle behind your motorhome. You'll need your tow bar, which is the connection between your motorhome and your vehicle. You'll need your base plate, which is the connection point on your vehicle that your tow bar will attach to. You'll need your safety cables, which is a supplemental connection in addition to your tow bar. You'll also need your diode wiring, which will take the lighting signals from your motorhome and transfer them to the lights at the back of your vehicle so people will know your intentions when going down the road. And lastly, you'll need your supplemental braking system, which will apply the brakes in your vehicle when you hit them in your motorhome to help you come to a safe stop. Some additional components you'll want to consider is a high-low adapter. This is what we've got installed here, and this is only necessary if the height of your motorhome and your base plate differ more than 3 inches. We've got an 8-inch drop installed here in order to give us a difference of only 1.5 inches between the two, giving us a nice level tow bar here. Because if the angle is too extreme, what will happen is every time that you take off, you will either pull up or down on the suspension on your vehicle, and that can prematurely wear out those components. By having it be completely flat like this, we're just pulling it straight and we're not going to be affecting our suspension in any way. You will need to make sure that you got the additional pins so you can get these all attached. Another thing that you'll maybe want to consider is your safety cables. If they're coily cables, in most cases, you're usually will have the length that you'll need, but adding a high-low adapter does often make your straight cables not quite long enough, and we've got extensions here at etrailer if you were to need those as well to ensure your cables are long enough. Roadmaster's Battery Disconnect switch is going to allow us to quickly disconnect our battery from our vehicle. This is often needed for certain vehicles when you place them into flat tow mode. Our Trailblazer here requires the battery to be disconnected when flat towing it. One of the issues with disconnecting your battery though when flat towing is if you've got nothing hooked up to your battery, you've got no power for anything, and oftentimes you need a supplemental braking system and potentially other accessories powered up and working for proper flat tow of your vehicle. By adding a battery disconnect in, we can easily get ourselves a source of power from the battery while getting the entire vehicle, the rest of our vehicle here, disconnected. And we can also get our battery into flat towed much faster because we can disconnect the battery with the press of a button. If we take a look at our disconnect switch here, the post over on this side is connected directly to the battery post, and the post on this side of our switch connects it back to the vehicle. We can kind of see that here. We'll just take this whole cover off to make things a little easier to see. So we can see here where we are connected to that first post, and then this connects it to the second post, powering up the whole bus on our vehicle. And we can engage and disengage this with the press of a button, and this is a very high-powered solenoid inside that is easily capable of handling high amperage draw that our vehicle may need for certain accessories that it has. This is a very quick and easy way to make your flat tow much simpler and get everything installed very easily. We can see here on the post on this side where we've got our supplemental braking system installed. So this way, no matter what, when we press that disconnect button, we're just disconnecting the car and this is going to stay powered up. Let's head in on inside so we can see how easy it is to operate it. We're now inside the vehicle here, and we can see this is our button that allows us to connect and disconnect the battery. We can go ahead and pan out and see that we've got our dome lights currently on here on the vehicle. I'm going to go ahead and press that button, and as you see, when I press the button, our lights turned off because we've now disconnected our battery. We could also hear the solenoid clink. I'm going to press the button one more time to re-energize the vehicle. Again, we heard it click. We can hear some things moving, and it may take a moment for everything to boot up and for our lights to return. Give her a minute here. Guarantee you she'll come on. Your vehicle does have modules that need to boot up and stuff, so it does take it a minute for everything to kind of come back alive again. And there you go, we can see our lights are coming back on, our vehicle's awake once again. So you can see with the easy, quick press of a button, we can get it into that flat tow mode, getting that battery disconnected. And then again, with a quick press of a button, we can get it back out of flat tow, have our vehicle back up and running so we can go run around town. We'll begin our installation with our battery disconnect. Underneath the hood, this is the main device here that's either going to connect or disconnect our battery. The first thing you'll want to do is mount it up. You'll get 2 self-tapping screws in your kit. And we just ran these self-tapping screws right here into the paneling. There's kind of a little, like a VIN plate sort of here. It's got a little information on it. So we put it right there, and that's nice and solid. Coming off of this, we're gonna have several wires. You're gonna have 2 large red wires, and these are gonna be labeled. You can see one says battery cable, the other says battery post. So that's important when we go to hook that to the battery. You'll also have a white wire, that's our ground wire. We'll be hooking that to a ground stud over here. And lastly, you have a gray wire, and inside of this gray wire, this is actually a duplexed sheathed wire. So inside of here, there's 2 wires, which are gonna be red and black. These 2 wires we need to route inside, so we just follow this path back. And there's a grommet located right back there. We had just poked a hole through and we push that wire through to get it inside. We can come back to that at a later step. We can go ahead and get these cables and our ground hooked up while we're still out here, but we just wanted to get that cable over there. To get our cables here hooked up, we'll need to remove the cover off the top of our battery. There's a release tab here and here. If we push in on both of those release tabs, you can kind of rock it like that to get it released off of there. Here we can see our cover, and this is our battery positive post right here. It's got a clamp around it with a stud that goes up, and that connects it to the bus bar here that goes to the rest of the electronics on the vehicle. We need to disable our vehicle when we're in flat tow mode, but we also need to be able to power up our braking system and components for flat towing. So what this will allow us to do, it will allow us to separate the car portion from our battery, but still allow us to have power from our battery. In the owner's manual for this vehicle, it asks you to disconnect the negative battery when flat towing, but if you were to disconnect the negative battery, you would no longer have, you'd lose your ground for your braking system components and things like that. So what we'll do is we'll take a 13mm socket now, and we're gonna remove the large nut from our stud there. After we remove that, we're also going to take a 10mm socket, and we're just gonna have that prepared because we're gonna be removing that nut and installing this component right on top. We'll now take our screwdriver and we're just gonna push up on the tab here to get it released off of there. And it can be a little stiff. This is still live, so make sure you're not touching any grounds when you're popping this off of here. Once we get this off, there we go. Now that we've got that disconnected, we can go ahead and pop that nut off the 10mm side. And then we'll take this portion of our tab here and we're just gonna fold this over just like that, right onto the stud. Then we'll temporarily take our nut, we're just gonna run it down on there. We will be removing that, but we're just trying to pinch that metal down. So now that we've got these 2 pieces separated, our car no longer is getting power. We've completely removed it from the positive post on our battery. So now we can grab our large red battery cables that we have here. This one says battery cable. This one says battery post. So the labels make it extremely easy to hook it up because battery post will go exactly where it says. The post is here for our positive. So this cable here is simply gonna slide right onto that post, and then we'll take that larger nut that we had previously removed. We're just gonna put that on there. We'll take our 13mm socket here and we'll just snug that down. Next, we'll switch back to our 10mm socket. We're gonna remove that nut that we had previously installed. And you can see that's just to give us a little bit more stud length sticking out so we can more easily install the nut when we go to put this cable on it, because it's a pretty thick ring terminal on this cable. So by tightening down that nut once, it will free up some of that stud length. So then we're just gonna slide this on here now. Kind of push down on it, and then get that nut reinstalled on there. So now you can see how this would work. In order for the battery positive to connect back to the vehicle, it has to go through our solenoid first so we can activate and deactivate it. To make the solenoid work here, we do have to wire up a few more wires. Out here, we also need to add our ground wire, which is this white wire coming off of it here. I just kind of routed it down. There's this ground stud right over here. So we're able to run right around that. We'll take the ring terminal that comes in our kit. We're just going to slide that on there, and then we'll crimp it down. Once we have that crimped down, we'll grab our 10mm socket once again. We're going to remove the top of this stud here. Slide that off. Take our ring terminal. We're just going to slide that in place. And then we'll just reinstall that ground stud. We'll now head inside the vehicle where we can grab our gray wire and hook it up to the switch that comes included with our kit. We're now inside the vehicle. We're going to head underneath the dash on the driver's side here. That's where our grommet's going to be located into the firewall. We can see here's our gray wire here passing through our grommet. And this grommet here, there was like a little nipple that kind of stuck out there. We just cut that nipple off, and that's how we were able to pass our wires through to the other side. This will continue on. We kind of go underneath the dash, and then we come up behind the dash panel here. We used a step bit to drill out a hole for our switch, and we passed our wire through it. To determine the size for your switch, I highly recommend a step bit, so that way you can ensure you get a nice tight fit, because you can just step it up and just kind of test it along the way until it feels good. Once we've got our wires here, the gray part here does go all the way to the end of the wire, so I did strip off some of that gray sheathing to reveal the two wires inside. I then stripped back both these wires so we can connect it to our switch here. We'll take our wiring first. Before we pass it through that hole, we're going to take the nut off of the back of the switch. So we just unthreaded it off our switch. We're just going to slide it on there because we need it to be on that side. We'll then pass the wires back through that hole. We'll grab our switch here, and on the back side, your wires might fall back down through, no big deal, we can pull it back through. You'll have two screws. We're going to loosen both of these screws up, just enough to where we can see through the holes so we can pass our wires through. We'll then take each one of these wires, might want to give them a little bit of a twist just to make the wires easier to pass through the hole. And then we're just going to slide one through one hole. We'll snug it down with our little screwdriver here. And then we'll slide the other wire through the other hole. And again, we're just going to snug that down with our little screwdriver. Make sure we get them snug. We can then slide that nut back up our wire and feed our switch through the hole. And you can see it's a nice tight fit. That's why we use that step bit there, because we want it to be nice and snug. Just push that into place, and then we'll thread that nut on the back side. So now that we've got all of our connections made, we're going to head back out to our solenoid. There's a fuse harness right here, and the fuse comes not installed, and we don't want to install it until we're all the way done so we don't accidentally cause any shorts while we're working. Since we've finished installing everything, we can grab that fuse now from our kit, slide it into our fuse harness, and then we'll head back inside to press the button and make sure everything's working properly. So we're here in the vehicle. We've got power to our components here. We're going to go ahead and hit the button, and things turned off. So now that we've lost power to the vehicle, we want to go ahead and hit the button again, and we can hear the solenoid activate, re-energize, and our light should illuminate here. We can see our dash came back on and our light's up there as well. So now that we know that it's working properly, we can go back through and clean up any of our wiring, zip tie it up to any components there just to make it nice and neat. If you need some additional zip ties or anything like that, you can get it here at eTrailer. And that completes our installation of Roadmaster's Battery Disconnect Kit on our 2021 Chevrolet Trailblazer.